are excited to share this award-winning program, the Student Wellness Approach that pairs physical, emotional, nutritional, a model that has not only just been incredible for us to watch as partners, but a model really for the country. And so I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Jen Ohlson, and I'd like to introduce our expert panelist, Eren Kirksey. And Eren, if you could just say a few words about yourself from IDEA Public Schools.
Hi, everybody. Eren Kirksey, IDEA Public Schools, going on my finishing of my 10th year as the Director of Athletics and Physical Education. Excited to be here.
Excellent. Well, we'll go ahead and share our screens. We've got a slide deck here that will kind of go through just what this approach is. And let's see here if I can get to that. Oops, wrong button. Present. All right, there we go, in present mode. Well, as I mentioned, IDEA Public Schools and IDEA began our partnership about 4 or 5 years ago when you guys first got your PEP grant, Ern. And let's just talk a little bit, let's just kind of get started with some of the goals for today and then just really go in. Eren's going to do most of the talking on sort of how he's built this architecture, as I mentioned, that has just become an award-winning program. So we're going to show you how IDEA schools are pairing physical education and social emotional learning efforts into their curriculum with heart rate technology, the impact that it's making, and we want to really just leave you with some resources and tips of how you can achieve your goals to improving student well-being using technology and data, which is going to be a big theme throughout our webinar. We're going to share firsthand experiences from IDEA, Eren's best practices, and then ideas that you can incorporate tomorrow into your vision, even in COVID, just some of the ways that we can get creative, be an advocate, and really drive our program forward. So discuss how to successfully strategize and implement that. And again, how to secure the funding is always a big thing, which we'll get to as we conclude tonight's webinar. We would love for you to ask questions. Down in the bottom of your screen on the right-hand side is a Q&A button. So please ask us questions as we go throughout, and just let us make this really interactive, because there's so much information that we're going to share tonight that we want to make sure that you get all of your questions answered as we go along. I'm going to start just really quick on what IHT does. We are wearable technology, as you can see on my wrist. This is the zone heart rate monitor. I'm in the blue zone right now, which means I'm at a pretty level resting pace. Sometimes I start these webinars and I'm in the yellow zone, which means I need to take a deep breath and slow down. So it's a great way, so in the moment, to give kids this visual feedback of what is happening inside their bodies right on their wrist. And Eren's going to talk about the impact that it's making at the student level. We have an app that goes with that. And so right now I'm looking at my app and how much time I've been set for a goal and how much I've actually done, which you can see here. I'm just standing here in blue doing nothing. So I'm not getting much physical activity, but I'm really excited. We also have curriculum resources. And then one of the biggest parts of our company that Eren's going to talk about is our professional development and our customer support. We have become the top selling heart rate monitor in education, and we're the only risk-based monitor made specifically for children and for schools. And what really makes us unique is the way that we can not only individualize the monitor for every student, but we can centralize that data in a district, a network like IDEA, over 3 states, soon to be 4, 5, 6 states, and being able for one individual like Ern to be able to take that data and centralize it and hold not only his teachers accountable, but every student. So the way that this works is the monitor works with a data reader. It goes into the cloud, and then it's able to correlate with a lot of different measures we're going to show you today that IDEA correlates to, and then who gets that information. So sharing that with the stakeholders, from administrators, parents, the students, our state and federal regulatory agencies, and organizations at the national level. As mentioned, we have really been working hard with our schools this fall and last spring on being able to not only provide a solution for in-school, but also with our app, being able to use it at home, and being able to give that information in real time to students. So the teachers back in the classroom or at their house, and being able to hold those students accountable, let them get their effort in, their workout, connecting mom and dad, and just making a really cross-sectoral collaboration between all stakeholders. Our IHT resources are part of that, and these are all online Google Docs that are just literally put into your learning management system or to Google Docs. But we've got units that have 4 or 5 lessons each in them, and you can kind of see they're all very heart-centered. So in stress, we talk about how stress impacts us physically, emotionally, nutritionally. There's usually a video that goes with that. So even at home, even without the monitors, this is all independent of that. We allow our teachers to be able to use our resources and to continue to build a really holistic learning and teaching experience for our kids. The ways that our schools are using IHT technology, Ern's going to talk about how we're really using it and impacting IDEA in physical education classes. We've become a real core of their strategy. Emotional self-regulation, where students that might need a little more emotional support are using the monitors all day long so that they can really be self-aware throughout the day as those emotional highs and lows come into play. Virtual programs, special education, and blended learning are the ways that IHT is making an impact in our schools. So enough about IHT. I just want to give you just a little bit of overview. I want to really now jump to IDEA's story. And Ern, can you just tell us a little bit about the IDEA model and the philosophy and what the overall arching aim is of your network?
Yeah, thank you, Jen. Appreciate it. So IDEA Public Schools, primarily in Texas, but we've already branched out to Louisiana. Starting next year, we'll be in Jacksonville, Tampa Bay, and then a short year or two from now, we'll be in Ohio, expansion plan. But IDEA Public Schools, we started off serving low socioeconomic students in very impoverished neighborhoods around the state. Again, I can say this year, you can look us up, we had another year of 100% college matriculation. And that is measured in that a student, every one of our graduating seniors across all of our campuses that have seniors, not only received a college acceptance letter, but actually will set foot or have set foot already on a college campus this fall. Let me see, where are we at? Oh, change slides on me. Just a little bit more about us. We are a K through 12 network. Our model is a little different than most, where we start with a few grade levels, and then every year it rolls up until you're eventually a full-scale campus. Generally, our campuses have about 3 PE teachers at a full-scale model, or 5, I should say, with 2 co-teachers. But yeah, what else do you want to know?
Well, I'd really like to dive into how you came into this leadership role. You were a teacher and became the administrator when you guys, I believe, received the PEP grant. And it was, I think the district was really moving towards how do we really integrate health and wellness, but it was just sort of, there was an intention, but as far as the strategy and implementation and success, I think you really took that from your leadership. And so kind of talk about when you came into your leadership role, when we met, and how you sort of integrated IHT from our chest monitors, which we used to have before we partnered with Adidas to make the IHT zone, and to where you are today. Can you kind of just talk us through starting small and building strong with us?
Yeah, thank you. So when I was able to get off the campus and take over the very first inaugural position of a PE curriculum manager, before I also had the district director of athletics title in there, we were in the 3rd and final year of a very significant PEP grant, and we had a few funds left over. The grant manager really didn't know what to do. We had received a little bit of Spark training here and there, and it was not like it didn't do what we needed it to do. So linking up with Jen, we basically decided, as the timeline shows there, we piloted the chest-based monitors for about 6 months or so across 6 campuses. I thought right off the bat, okay, we have 25 schools. I'm running all over the place between the Rio Grande Valley and 4 hours later in San Antonio and another hour and a half down the road to Austin. And I didn't really know, who do I need to see? What am I going to see besides just, instructional practices? But how do I know that the kids are getting out of that instruction what they needed? So in linking up with Jen, we piloted those chest-based monitors. I realized, like, this is it, because the data is what IDEA Public Schools is built on. So growing as we did over the next few years, we decided that we were going to go all in. I was able to convince our chief executives that data is what they wanted and IHT is what I needed. And as such, we began to roll it out. It was a little hesitation at first. Again, funding's always the big issue. And does PE really need to do this? And can't they just go outside? And I said, look, we're not going to be ball rollers, guys. I want our data to be reflected, celebrated, and warranted, just like all the other core subjects. And this is how I'm going to do it. So when I finally got the opportunity to say, look, this is what IHT is, and this is how IDEA is going to use it, it was a sold venture right off the bat after that. And moving on into now what 2019 or 2020 school year that we're at, we have 120 plus schools. For the last 3 years though, we have established IHT as our fundamental component for PE. Even when campuses don't have money for a whole lot of things, the number one thing I tell them we have to buy is IHT, simply because that is our student data measuring system. And what that means is at Idea Public Schools, when we set our goals, we need a way to capture that. And as good as Fitnessgram has always been, very anecdotal, it's not filtered. It is to the eye of the teacher who writes down numbers and tells the kid, this is the range that you're in. And that didn't really show the student's effort on a day-to-day basis. And so now we look at IHT, the monitors, as a component equivalent to the T90 calculator that's used in math classes. It's essential to the student success as part of our programming. And that's where we're at today. I mean, basically out of the 120 schools, we might have about 6 to 8 campuses that are struggling to make that purchase or haven't yet put in those purchase orders. Again, all by way of COVID and the impact that it's had on basically the entire nation and world. But we're getting there, and we're moving forward with it. We've already gone through 2 evaluations and decided we are sticking with IHT. And that's where we're at today, still gathering data using IHT.
And it's been an incredible journey that we've learned from too, because ideas pushing our company to learn and get better, enhance. And we're going to kind of go through some of the ways that we've really grown through the data collection, the dashboard, things like that. But what has really culminated this past year was the Alliance for a Healthier Generation. I mean, these are very stringent standards that were established by Healthier Generation, Healthy Schools Program. It's a version of the 2017 School Health Index from the CDC. And the awards are silver, bronze, or gold, and they're awarded annually on the number of best practices that have been implemented. And those aren't just around data and MBPA and physical education. It's meals and snacks. It's high quality education. It's connecting to academics, supporting your staff in an incredible way, building this program. And it's just been incredible what IDEA has been able to do. The Alliance for a Healthier Generation honored IDEA with 59 campuses out of their 120 with this district-wide approach. Of course, as Ern just mentioned, they're using IHT to have that data to prove the program. And I think one thing that's really important, it's not about just having a bunch of data. It's really about how are we, from the beginning, driving student growth. And oh, by the way, we have all this data to prove that it's working. And that's really the model that Ern and IDEA have taken. It's really been like, how do we put our students first? Overall, the Alliance recognized 136 Texas schools, 518 schools nationally, and IDEA's award makes up 43% of all Texas schools. That just talks about just the model that they built and the ability at the individual campus to be best practices, but then as a network, what they've been able to do, and compared on the national stage as well, being 11% of all schools that won that award. So Ern, I'm going to take it back to you sort of on this big picture vision. So what are the overall goals for your program?
Awesome, thank you. So, man, wow, it's a great question. Our goals are significant, right? Their goals are supposed to be, we use the acronym SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely. Our big picture goal is to eventually one day have a one-to-one usage where we're tracking not just students, but perhaps the parents, the staff, the faculty, the principals alike. What we want to do though is engage our community in such a way that warrants this highlight of overall fitness and health. And not just in athletics, not just the competitors, but overall, everybody, just simply from where you started to where you want to get to be a healthy mind, healthy body, healthy soul. Across our district, like as I mentioned, we're using IHT. We've bought into it. Our CEO, our new CEO, and our Chief Executive Officer of Operations, who happens to run the whole team that runs our Healthy Kids Here programming, they have this investment. And they've called me in. We've celebrated. We've been on meetings. We've been in newsletters and so on and so forth. But the big picture is to not stop, right? We want to keep going. Jen asked me this question earlier, and my response to her was this: there's a newfound investment in overall fitness and health, and never more imperative than as we are seeing these results of COVID. We know that it's a respiratory disease. The importance of having healthier kids in the dynamics of the communities that we're serving. Those of y'all that are from Texas that are on the line, you know that the lower Rio Grande Valley, Deep South Texas, San Antonio, Austin, unfortunately making that list of some of the most unhealthiest regions in the nation, definitely in the state. We're trying to make that impact. And our goal technically when I got hired was to be the healthiest district in the nation by 2022. By standards of the Alliance for Healthier Generation and the numbers on the previous slide, technically we have already achieved that goal in the year 2020 starting. However, we don't stop there. We want to push the envelope. And as such, I can say that our bigger goal now is how do we bring back and revitalize the health and sex education? How do we further invest our communities in our farming, our farms, real farms that we have, vegetation farms that we have on many of our campuses, not all, but many. And the list just goes on. And it's all interconnected in such a way that there's no reason for us to not push that envelope to say, hey, we're going to shoot for 75 instead of 59. And then to just keep going and keep changing our community one generation at a time. And the unfortunate is that there's a lot of elders who are set in their ways. And I'll say it, I always say to everybody, they're stuck on their menu. And we need to change that. We need to change that by showing that, hey, you can proceed to live your life in such a way, eat as you may, but feel free to work out. And teaching our kids to do that using this IHT technology, it's going to be a lasting sediment even beyond IDEA public schools as they go to and through college.
That's fantastic. I also wanted to introduce, and I apologize for this, Eric Larson and Jay Plotkin are running behind the scenes for us. And I want to make sure that I think we do have a couple of questions that are for Ern. And so I want to just, again, get those as we go so that we make sure to answer them as we're on the topic. But Eric Larson was an administrator and teacher for 35 years, just a really distinguished career at the Denver public school level, and then went to the Alliance for a Healthier Generation and was one of in their leadership team for physical education and programming. So Eric, I want to introduce you, and Eric's going to be taking our questions since I'm in full screen mode. So Eric, I think we have a couple questions for Ern. Potentially.
Yes, Ern. The question that came up, how many monitors do IDEA schools have per school? And are you sending the monitors home with all the students?
Okay, so we have not yet. I guess I could answer that back with the previous question. Our eventual goal is to get to a one-to-one basis. We're not there yet. So one class set monitor, the box charging station comes with 28. We have the model right now says that every PE teacher must have a monitor for the largest class that they're instructing. So if you have 40 kids, that teacher needs to have access to 40 monitors. That way we're capturing every single kid in every single class. Now, the beauty of IHT, right? The one monitor can be assigned to, I believe it's 25 kids. I may be off on that. I think it may be more, but at minimum 25 kids. So as long as they're not grouped together in the same class period, and even if they are, the group A, use it for the first 30 minutes, group B, use it for the second 30 minutes, so on and so forth. But to answer your question, we try to get at least 2 box sets, 28 per box set for every PE teacher. And then our motto is we have one academy PE teacher with a co-teacher that's first through fifth. There will eventually be one middle school teacher takes care of 6th through 8th with a co-teacher. And then the high school usually is just one teacher by themselves because our high school level grade populations is such a smaller population total. So you can say, what is that, 28 times 6 roughly? That's about how many monitors are on every campus, roughly, or on their way to being there as we continue to scale up each campus.
Yeah, and that hasn't happened overnight, obviously. We're going to get to the funding a little bit later, but again, I think the buy-in, this graph that's up right now, Ern, kind of showing not only the student level, but your teacher level as well, of how your teachers are moving the program forward. Talk about how having this to hand your administrators or principals has really, you don't have to go for outside funding because you are basically saying why this is so integral into the overall school day.
Yes, and the second part of that other question, we are not sending them home. This is a at school instructional piece of equipment. There are some things that we are hoping to move forward with down the road, but for right now, no, they're not going home. To what Jen was saying, the graphic that you're seeing, our district so heavily data driven. We've actually taken the data from IHT, as great as a platform as it is, and we've pushed the envelope even further. So now, you know, in our partnership after this many years, we have a system with IHT where our internal software developers have created, we call this a Power BI dashboard. So we get the raw data from IHT, they drop it into our system filters it, and it comes into this. And this is what our principals, our PE teachers, and faculty are able to, you know, scour through, see what's happening, see what's taking place. You know, this is not necessarily a part of IHT, but as you can see, our data ended, you know, as most schools did, right at the middle of March last year. But we had a total of 23,353 kids that used the IHT system at least 20 times. A total of 17.92 thousand met what was our goal. And you see that on the far right. We set the individual goal at 800 minutes. Again, because we know not every single student goes to PE every single day, nor do they get to use the monitor every day, depending on the class size and the inventory. So the goal was 800 minutes, and that's kind of reflected on the graphics to the far right, where you see that 76% of our kids, almost 77, met that goal when we stopped in March. And we remained with another almost 4,000 that were right on track if we had that last few weeks of school to probably meet that goal. And this is what we use. We'll show another graphic later. This is page 1, where it's showing you the student based. And again, we could filter through the region, the campus, and the type. And that goes back to my iteration earlier. I didn't know where to go with 120 schools. I didn't know who I needed to go see and go assist and help. But using this data, we're able to find those kids and find those campuses, find that populace that otherwise it would just go unknown. You know, they would just be going through their day without anybody there to warrant, hey, let's enhance, let's get going a little bit better. And sometimes it's just some small tweaks, but the data is what drives all of that methodology behind what we're doing, where we're going, who we're helping, and what kind of help we're trying to provide them. And a final note on this, you see where it says at risk and off track. When you start getting to that April or late March, early April, and we're looking at the students that have already hit green as the ones that are shown on the diagram there, we start targeting those off-track kids. And those are the ones that we start reaching out to grade team leaders and say, hey, can you stop pulling these kids from PE? Can they come to PE maybe an extra 10 minutes? And that's how we start to move the needle, as we say in our industry. And we find those kids that are in the orange and push them as quick and as fast as we can. And then that also helps the PE teacher understand who they need to target more, maybe who they're a little more observant of in their lessons and in their dynamics of how they're rolling out and playing interventionists through the day to move that needle.
Perfect. Well, we got one more question here about just the principal buy-in. So how do your principals feel about, you know, having people be pulled out and put into PE? How has that been received?
You know, there's always this, there's that sentiment, right? A student who does their work and gets good grades is usually going to get bored, leaving the teacher to have to also now kind of warrant lack of focus towards one group and start dealing with another. So we were able to kind of sell to our principals that, hey, Jen Ohlson, who's off the charts in ELA, maybe she's not as far along as she should be in PE. Perhaps she gets out of ELA a little bit earlier, maybe 10, 15 minutes, and she gets to go to PE a little bit sooner, get that monitor on. And now she's not only meeting her goals in ELA, but she's also meeting that goal in PE. And then you just use your imagination to see how we kind of run with that. Again, that methodology behind how do we reach every student to the best of our abilities all day long, whether it is in that core class or it is going outside into PE, and even in the other electives. But for us and the data that we use, this justifies a student being able to excel in both areas at the same time, if I may.
Well, I always have, you know, thought of Eren as a superhero, but I understand. I know you do so much, but you can't do it all by yourself. Like you mentioned, 120 campuses over 3 states, and basically the entire state of Texas, which is quite big, as we know. So how do you hold your teachers accountable? You talk about your course collab leaders and kind of training the trainer, making these managers and sort of laddering up your leadership to the top.
Yeah, thank you. So again, the dashboard is something that I refer to basically daily once we get going with it. Other than that, the principals or the manager of the PE teacher, we have small mini teach the manager lessons that say, hey, this is the checklist when you go into PE that you're looking for. Everything from find the trackers, find the monitors, coach them as you would an ELA teacher in terms of, is their lesson planning good? Is the execution delivery right? Even if they know nothing about the world of PE, which unfortunately most don't because they're mostly academic oriented, giving them this very brief checklist is essential. And then at the end of the day, it's go to this dashboard. And when they go to that dashboard, again, data being that driver, most of our principals, most of our managers do not want to get left behind. And because this is a district-wide platform, you can easily, match yourself up against your region, against other grade levels, against, one region to the next, one state to the next, now that we got Louisiana and Florida on the way. And so the accountability measure comes from the data. So meeting the managers. Now, in terms of the course leaders, we have PE course leaders, and essentially you call them like little mini me's. They're PE teachers all day long, but they excel at their job in such a way that we're able to bring them on in it's a stipend role. And once a quarter, they run our professional development series. Once a month, they're running webinars. And in those, you're getting both instructional, best practices, new science that's out there. We obviously run through our data sessions at every one of those ventures. And we call people out. You're doing a heck of a job. What's going on at your campus? There's no data, and everything in between. And then ultimately my presence to use this data and send a quick email. Hey, great job. CC their manager, principal now knows about it. Push, 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 push. In our newsletters, again, the accountability, when people see other people getting accolades, they wonder why their staff is not, which has created this new paradigm shift in terms of like, I need to pay more attention. I need to invest in this. It is essential. There are goals to be had. There is success to be made. And that's really where that accountability comes from. And then at the end of the day, the fact that IHT allows us to send every student's individual session report culminating throughout the year, built into this whole fitness journal, if I may. If I'm at work and blink, oh, look, there goes Jen. She just knocked out another 45 minutes of MVPA. I now have something to talk to my daughter about when she gets home. And hey, what did you do that got you 45 minutes? And how long were you there? Oh my gosh, that's crazy. And we're starting to see, again, with COVID and this new at-home hybrid learning, parents are jumping into the game now. They're doing these workouts at home with their kids. They're starting to understand what this monitor is. It's not a watch, it's not a GPS. It's not measuring who you are and where you're going. It's simply telling you your heart rate is being pushed or is not. And that is essential because we have tied that to student success, and then that student success iterates to campus success. So that's where the accountability was grounded.
That's just, so right on. And I think that's, again, putting the power in the hands of your students is so important, where they're taking their control, they're the self-learners, they're building that autonomy. The data that we just kind of scrolled through as you were talking is an IHT report that allows you at a central level to look at all of your teachers, the last time that they actually used the IHT system, how much time did they spend in MBPA, how many sessions did they get? So this, I think, helps you as a bird's eye view. Like you said, you can't spend 45 minutes in every single class, but a report like this, I think, kind of helps make your job easier. We do have a couple questions, and Eric, if you want to go ahead and ask a few while we're on the topic. I think if he's got it, Eric might be on mute.
One question is, how long does it take a class of 25 students to input their data at the end of class? And when I've worked with schools, it's usually 2 to 3 seconds per student. You want to expand on that a little bit?
Sure, I'll let Ern take it. Yeah, we got a picture up here of your kids actually checking the monitors back at IDEA. Kyle, and can you talk about being able to move your kids through in a quick pace before and after workout?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So again, in the beginning of class, systems and procedures, right? Everybody knows systems and procedures, no matter what subjectivity you're in. Students who go to change out into, as you can see in the picture, that this campus, they have the locker rooms and whatnot. So basically everybody goes to change. 25 students is really easy. I mean, it could take anywhere from just a few moments to roughly 5 minutes. And that is with, say you have 10 kids who don't change out for PE that day, they're going straight to get their monitor, they're going into their walk-in laps, and then every kid, as they come out of the locker room, they're going through this line. You can see right between those kids' feet there's a green arrow there. It's a practice that we've put in place, right? Like tell the kids exactly what to do, where to go, using cues. So 25 kids could easily get their monitors on in a straight line, walking through, as long as our internet's good at the campus that day. Probably less than 2.5 to 3 minutes if you're effective at your game and you know what you're doing. Another tidbit is that a lot of even our academy kids, I'm talking 4th and 5th graders, they become the little student teacher helpers, right? Usually they're carrying the ball bag or picking up the cones. We have kids who have learned how to basically navigate into the teacher's portal from the setup screen. And if it's a reboot, if it's a hard reset, or if it's a real quick close a box and start it again, we know how the kids are learning this on their own. So, I mean, really less than 3 minutes, I would say on average, to get 25 kids on their system going.
Great. We have one more question from Eric.
It says it looks like many students have about 10 to 15-minute PA sessions, so physical activity sessions. Do you know how close your students are to getting 60 minutes per day of MVPA? And then the second part of the question is, do you measure BMI or other health outcomes?
Okay, I'll go backwards. So the BMI, we actually pulled away from it. I mean, it's obviously something that's tracked because of FitnessGram. When you input a student into your system and you're giving them their monitor, you want to obviously first find their resting heart rate so you can program their monitor to read them at the right rate and levels. However, we've moved away from the BMI. We felt like it's something that was unjust. Again, it's not, I'm not gonna say the word's not anecdotal, but it's not a true telling story. I mean, there's many great athletes who would be utterly considered obese, but it's just sheer muscle. And then what was the other question? I went backwards.
Yeah, the other question, Eren, is
MVPA, right?
your students look like they have about 10 to 15 minutes PA sessions, physical activity sessions. How close are you to the students getting 60 minutes per day of MVPA?
So most of our PE classes in our model are about 45 to 50 minutes, not that they're going to get the full hour of PE every day. However, two things. One, we know that there's a recess block. We know that there are brain breaks, and then there's that after school programming that we provide our students on basically every single campus. So although it's not being measured directly in the PE instructional time, it's something throughout the day they're going to get. And then at the end of the day, and this kind of goes to something I think I'm going to get into later, is participation. At the end of the day, we want kids who are not using IHT for whatever reason, COVID or just not enough equipment or no equipment at all. They're tracking that they participated in 120 minutes of PE per week. That's essentially our goal, especially this year for a substantial amount of campuses who were just a little afraid to use them or not willing to experiment with these new modified ways of using them. I hope that answers that question.
I thought it was great. Yeah. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it. All right. Well, let's move on to the future. One of the things about award-winning strategy is that you're always evolving, you're always growing. And talk about the vision that you have. You talked about implementing IHT one-to-one, which is where a lot of campuses are going, but talk about integrating social emotional learning, which is also such a huge priority for our districts and our states right now.
Yeah, so I guess to give you a little info, right? So we understand that not every kid's going to come to school, right? A lot of districts are giving students that option to come in or remain at home. So one of the things that we've done this year, we released this document. It's called the recommended uses. And Jen, I'll be glad to share that with you, and you can pretty much kick that out if you feel the need to. What we've decided to do, instead of switching out monitors class by class by class, we're essentially telling campuses, pick one of these 3 ways that you're going to measure these students safely using during this IHT time. And what that would look like is, Jen, Jay, they would come into school, they get their monitor, and they're going to use it all day long. And the way that this wraps into the SEL is this. So if a student who doesn't go to PE every day, but is wearing a monitor every day, throughout that graphic that Jen's on right now, we can see at certain times of the day when a student spikes into that yellow or that red zone. And then we can find, working with our academic counselor comes up to us and says, hey, little Ern is having some issues. Do you have any info that I can use to kind of guide my intervention with them? I can say, hey, look, at 9 o'clock every single day, he's spiking and he's not even in my class. Like, what's going on? He's struggling in math, or it's maybe there's someone in that class that's bullying this student. Whatever the case may be, we now have this timestamp that allows us to kind of pinpoint when, and then we can also start to prepare to expect when we can intervene to help guide them through those social and emotional discrepancies. And with so many of our populations having to experience, go through or deal with, right, what has happened through COVID, just the sheer madness that it created, we know that this year is going to be vitally important, which is another reason why I recommended we may end up targeting lesser students wearing the monitors. That's a given. We understand that. But on the flip side of that, the benefit, especially with the academic and our social emotional counselors, is we can help them target, identify, and intervene with the students who are experiencing these sudden drops or sudden spikes, I should say, in focus. And it's causing them stress, anxiety, and then deal with it, help them navigate those emotions, those feelings, and move forward, hopefully, with the right planning.
Ern, you've done so much, but I want to just ask you what you're most proud of. And this isn't just your implementation of IHT district-wide, but as far as just your strategy and how have you changed the perception around physical education, physical activity district-wide in the short years that you've been in this leadership position? What are you most proud of?
Oh man. Oh, wow. That's a great question. So I think I alluded to this earlier, right? Unfortunately, the high academic focus of an organization that we are, a lot of people's mentality was, it's PE, it's basically recess. They're going to go outside, they're going to roll the ball. We call them ball rollers. We don't have those anymore, hopefully. What we've done is we've highlighted and created this investment in what PE is now doing for the campus culture, right? Students are eating better, they're learning more, they're more focused, they're more energetic. The real key though was the data to not only reflect student movement and excelling towards goals, but we were able to also show, going to work with some of our academic counselors to say, like, hey, look at the top 20 kids out of every grade level, and we can correlate them participating in PE, achieving moderate to vigorous physical activity, and then the number one thing, because that's what runs public schools, ADA, the average daily attendance. So by closing those gaps for the top level leaders all the way down to our PE staff, kids who come to PE, who wear IHT, who own their fitness and health, are coming to school more, missing less days, and then are actually your top level performers. And then we also bring in my other title where you say, and most of those kids are also athletes who are going above and beyond into the competitive world. And so this whole athletics and PE sentiment has gone from, it's just a standard elective that we have to have, to now this, they must be going, they need to go. How do we get these kids there more frequently, more often? And so the teachers, the faculty, the parents, everybody now has this new vision or insight for what is PE. And even when we're growing and we have new managers and principals who just don't know yet, it doesn't take long for them to figure it out once we start showing them the data and some of these reports and then they have that aha moment. And I think that's been the biggest sell, that it's not just a ball rolling class elective anymore. It is now this imperative, essential component of the idea public schools experience every day.
Yeah, and at the slide up on the screen, if you've had a chance to read this, this was in May 2017, so 3.5 years ago when IDEA was just getting started, and this was Hugh Flavin from IDEA Mission, and really this was an email that he'd written to Ern and forwarded to me, and I think I cried when I read it the first time, because I think it just goes to exactly what you said, Ern, is that this is now not just a need to have and where do we fit it in, and there's not enough time in the day, and it is just now woven into the culture, the environment, the learning core structure of IDEA. And this email, just way back when you were building this foundation, just talks about the ability to change kids' lives, change their academic futures, and just make the whole child, whole community that is so important to us. And so we do have one more question, I think, Eric, before we move on to sort of the funding that we're going to get to, and then we've got some resources that we want to share as we wrap up the last 15 minutes. But Eric, you've got another question.
Yes, the question is, can the heart rate monitors, the target zones be set for each student? And is it personal for each student or just on the monitor?
Yes, so what we have our PE teachers do, basically using the pacer to try to find their VO2 max, their resting heart rates and their max heart rates. We will set they will find the appropriate level so that the reader is reading your athletes from your less healthy students appropriately. And so anytime I come to class, I'm picking up monitor number 11. It knows that Eren Kirksey and this group is set at this level. And so the reader reads to me as such.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, they all are individualized. So when I put this monitor on, it's empty. There's no data in it. As soon as I tap it or turn it on with my phone, tap it on the reader, all of my personal settings, all of my information gets loaded in there. It knows it's Jen Ohlson, my height, weight, age. And so it allows the algorithm to be able to set those zones appropriately so that we're individualizing the program. It's not a cookie cutter, well, these are all third graders, they must be like this. It really individualizes it per student. And what you get from that is the ability to drive your outcomes, is where we'll sort of head next. And so talk about some of the data that you capture that is important, that you think other schools can really kind of think about how they can build a program like yours.
Okay, so again, I mentioned, the ADA, every time a kid uses the monitor, it counts it as a session. For the PE teacher, every day session date is every single day that they turned on that equipment. For me, knowing what quality level of movement, as much as I am in it, for everybody else, for students to overall have this love for fitness and health and just the world of life that can be from any different activity to help benefit them. Ultimately, my primary focus is the quality level of the movement that they're getting during that instructional period. So MVPA, you may have taught them how to kick a ball. You may have taught them how to rhythmically move in a great pattern and move about without bumping into each other. But did you do it in a way that was going to impact their health? Did they get into that yellow zone? Did they get into that red zone? And at what rate? And again, going back with a culmination of the data reports from IHT, and this now our live dashboard that we use internally, we've been able to close that gap. And so like Jen mentioned, or earlier to Jen, I said, this is the data that we need to talk to investors. This is the data we need to keep principals, on the hook for making sure that the schedule's appropriate, that kids can get into a PE class more regularly. Most of our campuses have that A-B schedule where you go, every other day to PE. At the academy level, it's mostly an ABC, which means a PE teacher's only seeing that student once every third day. So making the most out of every single minute that they're there, that's been our biggest aha moment. It's really not that hard. It is really not that hard as long as you give them a plan, give them a goal, and then use the data to drive every bit of your planning, your intervention, your management, and your awareness.
just a few other additional outcomes. IHT is the official software of the Presidential Youth Fitness Program, which is FitnessGram measures preloaded into our software. So the ability to capture all of your FitnessGram data within the IHT software, as well as, which is independent. So a lot of our schools just use us for FitnessGram data collection and reporting, adding the monitors, as Ern said, being able to do the pacer and being able to get a true assessment of a student's cardiovascular health, but also, as he mentioned, with the emotional, being able to have decreased behavioral incidents, principal referrals, suspensions, chronic absenteeism, and then Brockport, which is always so important to make sure that we're constantly supporting our special needs students. All of this can be preloaded into our software. So what we try and do is, you think about technology that, okay, I'm gonna get this and I'm gonna have to mold my program to the technology. What I think Ern has been able to prove as an example is he's got a vision and took our software and molded our software to your vision. Would you kind of describe it that way, Ern, on how you've taken our software and had it flexible enough to meet your goals?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I know we'll talk about that, I think, a little bit here later, but I applaud IHT first and foremost, because as a small Texas business that y'all were, we partnered up. And even I remember that day we talked to the commissioner from TEA, and he said, it's going to be tough for y'all to partner with the idea of public schools because they go crazy with their data. And I think that I know that IHT has gone above and beyond to be that customer service top-notch rated that we've needed. We've pushed, they've pulled, we've collaborated, we've butted heads, and we've come to this unique position in this partnership that it's a beauty in motion for what this program is and what this technology does to what we've turned it into by way of them allowing us to push them and continue to get that envelope going. It's just amazing.
So I don't know if we have any other questions right now, Eric. If we do, go ahead and let us know. But I want to have Ern, if you can kind of just to the audience out there as we sort of wrap up, like some of the key things and tips that you think are really important for individuals to do right now. We've got a couple on the screen here, but can you kind of elaborate on these?
Yeah, in a nutshell, I think I can synthesize it in this way, right? You have to have a plan. Business, you go to the bank, you're a brand new business, they want to know what is your long-term vision, what are your short-term goals, what's in the background, what's in the foreground. And so for us, data is that methodology. Being able to invest those administrators, getting their support, because all they want to know is the data. They're not overly invested in what lesson are you doing today with our kids. They want to know, are the kids being successful? Again, a lot of the academic leaders don't have the background in PE or athletics, so they don't necessarily get it. I say get it in quotes, but the school-wide paradigm shift bullet that she put on there, that Jen put on there for us, everything that we've done involved everybody. When a student signs up for Idea Public Schools, they're part of their onboarding documents and their annual documents let parents know that there's this technology used to capture movement, as they would with any other class, the different components. The admins, as I mentioned earlier, they themselves compete about who's going to get more awards that the district has out there. Who's going to swoop up the most. The teachers, using myself, the course leaders, Jen Ohlson, her team, people from SHAPE, people from Tayford's, using all that's out there to increase the capacities of our teachers and then hold them accountable, right? And then the students are the key. They're the essential part, because the students need to be in school to use that. The students are the ones that need to be motivated so the data is better. But then the PE teacher has to up their capacities, get that much more creative, meet the students in a way that these new millennials, as I call them, the way they learn, the way they interact with one another. It's technology. The lights tell you what's going on. Everybody has a cell phone nowadays, and you don't like to run with your cell phone, but you also want to know, how far are you going? So now you got to open your cell phone, look at it. For us, it's not about how far you go. It's not necessarily about how long you stayed in one zone versus the other, but knowing that in your moment of effort, are you giving that great effort, right? So everybody is involved in this in such a way that that keyword there's ownership. The principal owns the campus, the teacher owns the class, the student owns their health and fitness. And that's where we're at today with the idea of public schools and and IHT, I'm sorry.
All right, well, we'll save the best for last is like, how do you pay for it? Obviously, IDEA has found a way, and it's been a really simple plan. When I asked Eren this, we went over the slides today, and I was like, okay, I want all these bullet points of 2011, you got the PEP grant, and then where'd you go find the funding? And your answer was, that was pretty much it. Got the ball rolling to build your foundation, and everything else is sort of, like you said, the buy-in from the district. Can you, any other words of how you went after the funding or what you're doing now currently to continue to expand your program?
Yeah, again, without the data to emphasize what it is the importance behind the dollar of where the principal gets a $500,000 of budget. Where do they put their money? They got to buy this, they got to upgrade this, they have a new teacher, they got this new program. For us, and I guess COVID was kind of like this intuitional sign, right? Subliminal, but even with no shared equipment, students still need to get PE, and students should still be moving moderately to vigorously. Indoors or out, it has to happen. And so my point of view was this: even if you don't share equipment in PE, using these monitors allows a student, even on cardio day, to run outside, make their moves around the gym and playgrounds, own their fitness still, even if the lesson is a little less interactive. So bottom line, with no equipment in PE, buying the IHT and getting that invested into the campus as part of the essential components of instruction, that is kind of where we went. Now, we are in a unique situation. It's kind of hard to compare us to a lot of other people, and I don't know exactly where everybody's at on the line here, but because we grew so quickly, because we grew so fast, and most school districts are not across regions or counties even, we're across the state from El Paso to Louisiana right now, North Texas to South. Our model allowed me to basically say, here is your annual budget, and the very first line item on there for PE. I don't care about PE uniforms. Kids can wear gym shorts and a shirt. It doesn't matter. You must get the IHT monitor, because at the end of the day, that's where you're going to get your student achievement data from. Student achievement data is what we use to measure student eval. A lot of y'all might remember PADAS, the professional development series. So at IDEA Public Schools, we have a teacher career pathway. And so I leveraged what was our assessment of the teacher, our assessment of the campus, our assessment of the program, all came from IHT. So it was hard for admin to say, well, I'm not going to buy it. Well, if you don't get it, then you're not going to have student data, teacher data, campus data. And it was, again, being as data driven as we are, that's just not acceptable. So unlike some of you all, some of y'all might be in that position where, smaller district or not, how do we get to this? At the end of the day, if you do the research, if you call on Kirksey, if you call on Jen, let us give you the spiel, let us share some of our data points with you. It speaks for itself. It is essential. And like I said, at the end of the day, being able to say, hey, Jen Ohlson had perfect attendance. And then I can say, oh yeah, and Jen also was a top 5 in the amount of minutes in MVPA, amount of calories burned, and the amount of time in the zone completely. Like that all is the story that is the sell, right, to the bank, the principal, the district, in terms of how do you fund this program going forward. And again, don't be hesitant to look for a grant. We've sought out some private donors. We've had some parents, a lot of people forget that kids' parents are also business owners. They're also involved in the banks. They're also involved in the Chamber of Commerce. They know who's who down the road in the local community. And so we've had people donate money to us. We've had people say, I'm going to buy that for your class because your class needs more. It's random. It doesn't happen all the time, but it is an option. It's an opportunity to leverage and to continue to build that inventory in such a way that you can go back and say, hey, look, your investment, this is what it's done for us. Let me show you this data and how many kids have succeeded. I think that's key and essential. And Jen, if I get a chance to here, I would love to quickly share my screen. I found one of those old reports that we used to use. I don't know if we have time for it. I'd just like to, if I could, briefly go over that.
Yeah, sure. Well, we've got 3 minutes left.
Okay.
Why don't we do this? What I'm going to do for everybody, if you weren't able to make it, you're watching this recorded, we really appreciate it. But what you're going to get is a lot of resources. The report Eren's talking about that will explain that, again, drives his program and gets that buy-in. There's $30 billion of COVID funding out there to support student wellness. There's ESSA funding, there's SEL funding. You can see here in the 1.3 billion, 260 million. So looking for funds at the national level, there's so much money out there. And then looking at the your Department of Eds and looking at the state funding as well. This came out from TEA today about how we're revising our state standards and also some opportunities for state grants as well. So look at some of those. We're going to send you strategy roadmaps for our funding, for SEL funding, and a roadmap for other things. We're going to send you a 2-page funding request template that you can just take and make it your own. And then of course you'll have our contact information. So reach out to us and we actually kind of work with you to help you identify grants and submit applications. But getting it at the inside your district is always the easiest place to go. So the future is bright. Ern, I'm just going to let you take the last few words about just a couple of words of encouragement before we wrap up with our emails, so that you guys can reach out to us as soon as this is over if needed with questions.
Yeah, again, thank you so much, IHT, for bringing me on. I do appreciate it, and I do appreciate every bit of partnership experience that we've had. To everybody on the line out there, guys, it's all about self-advocacy. I've been in this role now 6 years. This is going to be my 7th, wrapping up. It's advocacy, letting people know that we are important. Without healthy kids in the healthy mind, healthy body, you're not going to have great learners in the classroom. But pushing the envelope, reallocating funds for things that maybe are not necessarily essential versus saying student health and overall performance and ability to come to school and be the best top-notch student they could be. It's invested, it's grounded in what we do with IHT, teaching kids to not just come to PE and participate, but to have this newfound enlightenment for what it means to own your personal fitness and health, to change the trajectory of many of our students' families who are diabetic, overweight, obese, have died from diabetes and heart complications, and really hitting them with the true life nature that is the world we're living in, and more so now today with COVID, and understanding the importance of healthy lungs, a healthy body, a healthy heart. I think self-advocacy is the absolute #1 venture. And so if you're a PE teacher out there, or you're an administrator out there, I mean, everything from local businesses to your chamber of commerce to reach out to some of your kids' parents who maybe own small businesses that might be able to contribute. But at the end of the day, I know I had that hunch after that first dinner, Jen, that partnership dinner meeting. Thank you so much. It was a great meeting, but it was essential that to meet the students' needs, we had to do it in such a way that was going to allow them to take ownership long-term of their health. And I feel like IHT has done that for us. So advocate for yourself to the best of your ability, and then utilizing most of those resources Jen's talking about, gobs of money out there. And yes, it may be tied to a little bit of community engagement and a little this and a little bit more in the social emotional learning stuff. But most of the grants that Jen's talking about, there's money to be had to be able to try this, pilot it, start small, grow big. We just happen to blow up the way we did simply because we're expanding as a network the way we are. But even to the small district, the little 1A, 2A, 3A schools, everybody has health issues that need to be addressed. And I feel like using IHT as your leverage is essential, and it will benefit you in the long run.
Thank you, Ern, and thank you, IDEA, for our partnership, and thank you all for being a part of this, for all that we do, and please reach out to us. We're here to help, and we thank you again for the difference you make in children's lives and our schools. Have a great night.